The United Nations chamber fell silent. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of anticipation hanging over the room. Delegates from around the world, their faces etched with a mixture of disbelief and anger, turned towards the American delegation. Whispers and murmurs filled the chamber as diplomats tried to process what had just happened. Moments earlier, the United States had cast a vote that sent shockwaves through the international community. It was a moment that would be etched in the annals of history, a turning point that no one had anticipated. For the first time in its history, America had refused to condemn a blatant act of Russian aggression. This was not just a vote, it was a statement, a declaration that the old rules no longer applied. The vote was not merely a procedural matter, it was a seismic shift in American foreign policy, a move that left allies and adversaries alike questioning the future of international relations. It was a repudiation of decades of bipartisan consensus, a break from the past that signaled a new, unpredictable era in global politics, and a stark illustration of the Trump administration's willingness to align itself with authoritarian regimes, even at the expense of long-standing allies. The implications were profound, and the world watched with bated breath. The resolution before the Security Council was unambiguous in its condemnation of Russia's renewed offensive in eastern Ukraine. It was a clear call for justice, a demand for accountability. It called upon Moscow to cease hostilities, withdraw its forces, and respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The message was clear, but the response was anything but. The language was strong, but the facts were even stronger. The evidence of Russian aggression was irrefutable, and yet the vote revealed deep divisions within the international community. Russian troops and tanks had crossed the border, violating international law and reigniting a conflict that had already claimed thousands of lives. The images of war-torn Ukraine were a stark reminder of the human cost of geopolitical games. The vote was 14-1, with the United States standing alone in its opposition. It was a moment of isolation, a stark contrast to the unity that had once defined the Security Council. Even China, Russia's closest ally on the Security Council, chose to abstain, unwilling to offer its full support for Moscow's actions. This abstention spoke volumes, highlighting the complexities of international alliances. The American veto was a diplomatic earthquake, the aftershocks of which will be felt for years to come. It was a moment that redefined alliances, reshaped strategies, and left the world grappling with a new reality. It signaled the end of an era, one in which the United States, for all its flaws and missteps, had been seen as a bulwark against tyranny and a champion of freedom. The world now faced an uncertain future, with the rules of the game forever changed. The United States has not always lived up to its ideals. From its inception, the nation has grappled with the tension between its lofty principles and the often harsh realities of its actions. There have been dark chapters in its history, moments that starkly contrast with the values enshrined in its founding documents. The internment of Japanese Americans during World War II and the era of segregation are stark reminders of these contradictions, times when its actions have contradicted its rhetoric. The Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal further illustrate periods when the nation's actions fell short of its ideals, leading to widespread disillusionment and protest. But through it all, there has been a consistent belief in the importance of international cooperation, a recognition that global challenges require collective solutions. This belief has driven the United States to play a leading role on the world stage. A commitment to upholding a rules-based order where nations are held accountable to international laws and agreements. This commitment has been a cornerstone of American foreign policy for decades, and a willingness to stand up to aggression even when it was not in America's immediate self-interest to do so. This has often meant deploying military forces to distant lands to protect allies and uphold international norms, even when it was not in America's immediate self-interest to do so. From humanitarian aid to diplomatic efforts, the United States has often acted out of a sense of moral responsibility. From the founding of the United Nations in the ashes of World War II, a time when the world was desperate for peace and stability, the United States took a leading role in shaping a new international order. to the Cold War confrontation with the Soviet Union, a period marked by ideological battles and the ever-present threat of nuclear war. The United States stood firm in its opposition to communism, promoting democracy and freedom. The United States has played a pivotal role in shaping the post-war world through initiatives like the Marshall Plan, which helped rebuild war-torn Europe, and the formation of NATO, which provided a collective security framework. America sought to create a stable and prosperous world. It has used its economic and military might to deter aggression, promote democracy, and support the establishment of democratic institutions in countries around the globe, and provide humanitarian assistance to those in need. Whether through disaster relief or development aid, the United States has often been at the forefront of global humanitarian efforts. Its leadership has not always been welcomed. There have been protests and criticisms, both at home and abroad, questioning America's motives and methods. Its motives have not always been pure. Controversial policies and actions have sometimes led to accusations of hypocrisy and self-interest, but its presence has been a constant. Through wars, crises, and changing political landscapes, the United States has remained a key player on the global stage, a source of both reassurance and apprehension. For some, America's involvement has been a stabilizing force. For others, it has been a source of tension and conflict. The decision to vote against condemning Russia's actions in Ukraine represents a sharp break from this tradition. It signals a shift in America's approach to international conflicts and its role in upholding global norms. It is a rejection of the very principles upon which the United Nations was founded. Principles of collective security, international law, and the protection of human rights, and a betrayal of the trust that America's allies have placed in it. Allies who have long relied on the United States to lead and support them in times of crisis. It is a signal that the United States is no longer willing to bear the mantle of global leadership, a mantle that has defined its foreign policy for much of the past century, that it is retreating from the world stage, a retreat that leaves a void in global leadership and raises questions about the future of international cooperation, and that it is content to allow other powers, some of them hostile to the values America has long espoused, to fill the vacuum. Powers that may not share the same commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. The legacy of American leadership is complex and multifaceted. As the world watches these shifts in power dynamics, the question remains, what will the future hold for global leadership and the values that have long underpinned it? The Trump administration has offered a number of justifications for its decision to side with Russia at the United Nations. Some have argued that the resolution was too harsh, that it failed to take into account Russia's security concerns, and that it would have been counterproductive, making it more difficult to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis. Others have suggested that the United States has no business interfering in what they see as a regional conflict, that Ukraine is not a vital American interest, and that the United States should focus on its own problems before trying to solve the world's. These arguments are disingenuous at best and dangerous at worst. They ignore the fact that Russia is the aggressor in this conflict, that it has illegally invaded and occupied Ukrainian territory, and that it is actively supporting separatist forces in eastern Ukraine. They also fail to recognize the broader implications of Russia's actions, which represent a direct challenge to the post-war order in Europe and a threat to the security of NATO allies. By aligning itself with Russia, the United States is not only abandoning its principles, it is also emboldening other authoritarian regimes around the world. It is sending a message that aggression will be tolerated, that international law is meaningless, and that might makes right. This is a dangerous precedent to set, one that could have far-reaching consequences for global stability and security. The vote at the United Nations was not the only instance of tension between the United States and its allies in recent days. The diplomatic landscape has been fraught with disagreements and misunderstandings, reflecting deeper issues that have been simmering for some time. During a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, President Trump engaged in a heated exchange over the issue of European military spending. This was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of confrontations that have marked recent international interactions. Trump, as he has done on numerous occasions, accused NATO allies of not paying their fair share for their own defense, arguing that the United States was being taken advantage of. His rhetoric has often been blunt and uncompromising, leading to friction with long-standing allies. Macron, in a rare public rebuke of an American president, pushed back forcefully. He emphasized the importance of unity and shared responsibility within the alliance, highlighting the contributions that European nations have made to collective security. He reminded Trump that France had fought alongside the United States in Afghanistan and Iraq, underscoring the sacrifices made by French soldiers in these conflicts. This historical context is often overlooked in the heated debates over defense spending. Macron also pointed out that France was actively engaged in counter-terrorism operations in Africa, a region where the threat of extremism remains high. These efforts are crucial for global security and demonstrate France's commitment to international stability. Furthermore, he highlighted that France was contributing significantly to NATO's collective defense, participating in various military exercises and operations that enhance the alliance's readiness and capabilities. The exchange, captured on camera, was a stark illustration of the growing rift between the United States and its transatlantic partners. It was a moment that encapsulated the broader tensions and differing perspectives that have come to define recent diplomatic interactions. But the clash between Trump and Macron was not just about style or substance, it was also about truth. The way leaders present and interpret facts can have profound implications for international relations and trust. Trump, in a moment of either confusion or deliberate misdirection, claimed that European aid to Ukraine was a loan. This statement was not only inaccurate, but also misleading, potentially undermining the credibility of the United States on the global stage. Macron, visibly taken aback, corrected Trump, pointing out that the aid was a guarantee of support for Ukraine's sovereignty. This correction was crucial in maintaining the integrity of the international support for Ukraine. Trump, undeterred, repeated the false claim moments later. This insistence on a false narrative highlighted a troubling aspect of his approach to diplomacy and international relations. The incident, though seemingly minor, was revealing. It provided insight into the challenges of navigating truth and misinformation in the realm of global politics. It highlighted Trump's casual disregard for facts, a trait that has often put him at odds with both allies and adversaries. This approach can have significant consequences for international trust and cooperation. His willingness to distort the truth to fit his narrative has been a recurring theme in his interactions with other world leaders. This tendency complicates diplomatic efforts and undermines the foundation of mutual respect and understanding. It also revealed his apparent lack of understanding of the complexities of international affairs. This lack of nuance can lead to oversimplified solutions to intricate problems, often exacerbating rather than resolving issues. It also underscored the growing sense among America's allies that the United States can no longer be relied upon as a reliable partner. This erosion of trust has far-reaching implications for global alliances and partnerships, that its word can no longer be trusted, a sentiment that has been echoed in various diplomatic circles. The consistency and reliability of a nation's commitments are fundamental to maintaining strong international relationships, and that its actions are often at odds with its stated values. This dissonance between words and deeds creates uncertainty and instability, challenging the very principles that underpin international cooperation and diplomacy.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.